In this lecture, we are going to talk about a new term that is the allomorphs. What is an allomorph? An allomorph is defined as the phonemic form of a morpheme. Well, a morpheme, whether it is a free morpheme or a bound morpheme, an affix or a base, a derivational affix or an inflectional affix, any morpheme in English has a written form and a pronounced form, a phonemic form. On the paper, on the screen, it is a morpheme. But when we pronounce it, it is called an allomorph. So the allomorph is the phonemic form of a morpheme. It is the pronunciation of a morpheme. An example of allomorphs is the ed morpheme, which has 3 allomorphs. The ed morpheme is an inflectional suffix. It is a morpheme and it has 3 pronunciations: te, de, and id. When the verb ends with a voiceless consonant, except te, the ed that is attached to this verb is pronounced as te. Smash is a verb that ends with she. She is a voiceless consonant. When we add the ed, this ed is pronounced as te. Smashed. When the verb ends with a voiced sound, like voiced consonants or vowels, except de, the ed is pronounced as de. Clean ends with ne. Ne is a voiced consonant. When we add the ed, it is pronounced as de. Cleaned. So this is the second pronunciation of the ed morpheme, de. When the verb ends with de or te, the ed is pronounced as id. For example, add, added, paint, painted. So the ed is pronounced as id. Notice that we have 3 phonemic forms, 3 pronunciations of the ed morpheme: te, de, and id. So the ed has 3 allomorphs because it has 3 different phonemic forms, 3 different pronunciations. They are different allomorphs of the same morpheme, which is the ed morpheme. These allomorphs, these phonemic forms, can never occur in the position of each other. It means that each one of these allomorphs can never occur in the position where the other allomorph should occur. Well, we have 3 allomorphs of the ed morpheme: te, de, and id. After voiceless consonants except te, we have the te allomorph. Can we have the de allomorph instead? Smash, smashed. But can I replace it by de, smashed? Can I pronounce the ed as smashed? I can't, because this is the position where the ed should be pronounced as te. This is a rule. Cleaned. The ed is pronounced as de. Can I pronounce it as id, for example? Cleaned, cleaned. No, it is not possible because in this position, after voiced sounds, the ed should be pronounced as de. And the same is applied for the id. So each one of these allomorphs cannot be replaced by other allomorphs. Each one should be pronounced in its own position. T is pronounced after voiceless consonants except T. D is pronounced after voiced sounds except D. And id is pronounced after T and D. And that's it. So they cannot be replaced by each other. Each one should occur in its own position. And this is what is called complementary distribution. The allomorphs are in complementary distribution. It means that each phonemic form of the same morpheme can never occur in a position of another phonemic form. Let's define the complementary distribution. It means that each one of the different phonemic forms, the allomorphs, of the same morpheme can never occur in a position or positions where the other forms can occur. This is what is meant by complementary distribution. So to summarize, the allomorphs are different phonemic forms of the same morpheme. Different pronunciations of the same morpheme, which are in complementary distribution, which means that each one of these phonemic forms can never occur in the position of each other. So the allomorphs are the pronunciations of one morpheme which cannot be occur in the position of each other. Each one should occur in its own position. They cannot be replaced by each other. Let's have more examples about allomorphs. Deep. Deep is a morpheme. It is a free morpheme. It is an adjective. D-double-E-P. This is the morpheme. When we pronounce it as deep, as shown below, this is the allomorph. The pronunciation of the morpheme is the allomorph of this morpheme. So, the allomorph is deep, the spoken form, and the written form is the morpheme. When we add the derivational suffix th to this morpheme, it becomes depth. So instead of deep, we have depth. So it is pronounced as depth. Notice that deep and depth are two pronunciations of the same morpheme, which has the same meaning, but two different pronunciations. These two different pronunciations are the two allomorphs of the same morpheme. They are the allomorphs of the same morpheme, deep and depth. We have depth because of the effect of the addition of the derivational suffix th with deep. It becomes depth. So both of them are in complementary distribution. Both allomorphs, deep and depth, are in complementary distribution. How is that? We cannot say depth when we pronounce deep, and we cannot pronounce depth as deepth. Each one should be pronounced in its own position. Deep is pronounced as deep, not depth, and depth is pronounced as depth, not deepth. That is why these are the allomorphs of the same morpheme and they are in complementary distribution. The second example is press. This is a morpheme. It is a free morpheme and it is a verb. This morpheme is pronounced as press. So press is the allomorph of this morpheme, the pronunciation of this morpheme, press. When we add the derivational suffix ure to this morpheme, it turns from press into presh, because this word is pronounced as pressure. Pressure. So it is pronounced here as presh. So notice we have press and presh. Press and presh after adding the derivational suffix ure. It means that we have two allomorphs, two pronunciations of the same morpheme. Each one of them should be pronounced in its own position. They should never occur in the position of each other. So they are in complementary distribution. I cannot pronounce press as presh or presh with a pressure as a presser. It's wrong. That is why they are in complementary distribution. The third example is the S plural morpheme. This morpheme has three allomorphs, three different pronunciations. They are se, ze, and is. These allomorphs are in complementary distribution. They cannot be pronounced in the position of each other. They cannot occur in the position of each other. It means that, for example, I cannot pronounce cats as cats or dogs as dogs. I cannot pronounce pages as pages. Each one should occur in its own position. Each one should be pronounced in its own position, and there are rules for pronouncing the S plural. So, the S plural has three allomorphs, and these allomorphs are in complementary distribution. Another example is divine. The pronunciation or the spoken form is divine. So this is the allomorph of this morpheme. The pronunciation of this morpheme is the allomorph of this morpheme, divine. But when we add the derivational suffix ity, divine becomes divin, because the word is pronounced as divinity. So we have divine and we have divin after adding the ity. So notice we have two pronunciations, two different pronunciations, two different allomorphs of the same morpheme. These two allomorphs are in complementary distribution. We cannot pronounce one in the position of each other. I cannot pronounce divine as divin when it is alone, and I cannot pronounce divin as divine with ity. I cannot say divinity. That is why they are in complementary distribution. Each one should be pronounced in its own position. Still, they are the allomorphs of the same morpheme. We've said that each morpheme in English has an allomorph. When we pronounce the morpheme, this pronunciation is the allomorph. This phonemic form is the allomorph. And we've said that some morphemes have more than one phonemic form, more than one pronunciation. So they have more than one allomorph, like the S plural, the ed past, morphemes like deep, divine, etc. But the question is that, do all morphemes in English have more than one phonemic form, more than one allomorph? The answer is no. Some morphemes in English have only one allomorph, one phonemic form, even after adding some morphemes to them. They keep only one pronunciation each time you add other morphemes to them. So they have only one allomorph. Let's take an example. Boy. Boy is pronounced as boy. So the allomorph is the pronunciation of this morpheme, boy. After adding the derivational suffix hood, it becomes boyhood. Notice that the pronunciation remains the same, boy, the same allomorph. Boyish, after adding the derivational suffix ish. Boy, boyish, the same allomorph, the same phonemic form. Boys, after adding the s plural, again, boy remains the same. The pronunciation of boy remains the same. So boy, boyhood, boyish, boys, in all of them, boy is pronounced the same, which means that the morpheme boy has one allomorph, only one allomorph, even after attaching some derivational or inflectional suffixes to this morpheme. So it has only one allomorph. Another example is the morpheme equip. This morpheme is pronounced as equip. So this is the allomorph of this morpheme, equip. After adding the derivational suffix age, the word becomes equipage. Notice that the morpheme equip has the same pronunciation, the same phonemic form, equip, equipage, equip, equipage, the same. So it has one allomorph in these two words. After adding the derivational suffix ment, the word becomes equipment. Again, the same pronunciation, equipment, equip, equipage, equipment. In all of them, this morpheme is pronounced the same. It has only one phonemic form, one allomorph. So this morpheme has only one allomorph even after adding derivational suffixes to this morpheme.